Good morning. My name is Kristen Mon, and I am the Director of Housing Development and Incentives for the Tulsa Authority for Economic Opportunity, or TAEO. TAEO is the public trust authority that serves as the lead entity for the City of Tulsa in carrying out community and economic development. Thank you for joining us today for a presentation on energy efficiency programs for single-family landlords and property managers presented by PSO, the City of Tulsa, and TAEO. Before we begin today's presentation, I want to share with you two opportunities for landlords and property managers at the City of Tulsa. The first is the Abode Initiative, which provides information to landlords and property managers about resources and opportunities in the City of Tulsa, such as this webinar. You can receive regular email updates and also reach out to the city and TAEO with questions or concerns that you may have. There's no cost to participating. You just need to email me at kmaun@cityoftulsa.org. The second opportunity is the Gold Star Landlord Program. This is a free and voluntary program that provides rewards and incentives for landlords and property managers who engage in the best rental practices. Incentives include advertising and promotion as a Gold Star landlord, prioritized processing of applications to the City of Tulsa's Emergency Rental Assistance Program, and access to landlord incentives funded by the City of Tulsa's Affordable Housing Trust Fund, such as the Tulsa Day Center's Landlord Guarantee Fund that you may have heard about recently. To become a Gold Star landlord, landlords must agree to participate in free programs, including the Tulsa Health Department's Safe and Healthy Homes program. For more information on the Gold Star Landlord Program, please visit www.cityoftulsa.org/landlords or email goldstar@cityoftulsa.org. Our presenters today are Carrie Rowland and Jason Fisher. Carrie is the Consumer Program and Energy Efficiency Coordinator for PSO, and Jason is a Technical Specialist for ICF, which manages the PSO Energy Efficiency Programs for PSO. They will be talking today about energy efficiency programs for single-family residential rental properties. Next week, they will be presenting on the energy efficiency program for multifamily properties, so please join us again on the 19th for more information on multifamily programs. There will be an opportunity for questions afterwards. We ask that everyone keep their cameras off and microphones muted during the presentation. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. We will also be recording this presentation and will make it available to share online. So thank you, and I will turn it over to Carrie and Jason.
Hi, thank you, Kristen. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. We're really excited to share with you this program talking about energy efficiency and single home residences. And with us today, I have Jason Fisher. Jason is the lead in helping us implement our energy efficiency program for residential. So Jason, I'm going to let you take over. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Carrie. So PSO really likes to go through a little safety moment before we start every meeting. And I wanted to talk about the carbon monoxide poisoning that's out there. It could potentially be deadly. These are the things that you could potentially see if you are experiencing carbon monoxide poisoning. You get a kind of a dull headache, weakness, dizziness, vomiting and nausea, confusion, blurred vision, and shortness of breath and loss of consciousness. It's important to kind of be aware of these things, because if those things are happening to you, you can identify it and then get out into some fresh air. I always get asked, where does carbon monoxide come from? Well, it comes from these places right here. These are a couple of good examples. The one picture on the right there is a heat exchanger inside your furnace. And so if you have a gas furnace, and it's a particularly old one, sometimes if it's so old, the condensation will build up inside those little louver thingies there. That's called the heat exchanger, and it'll rust through, and carbon monoxide actually then is being put into the house through those cuts or those holes. Another way that it could potentially happen is a flue that's disconnected, like the picture there on the left. So if you guys see that kind of stuff, make sure you get it fixed by a professional. Call somebody out and have them get that taken care of, because like I said, it could be very deadly. These are a couple of other pictures that I've taken out in the field. The one on the left there should have a draft diverter there at the very top of the water heater. And basically what that does is it brings a little bit of fresh air in with the buoyant hot air coming from the combustion of that appliance and all the moisture, but the carbon monoxide and all of the other ingredients that are mixed in that exhaust go up through the flue and safely out of the house. Without that draft diverter connected, it simply doesn't work. So that those poisonous gases are coming inside the house. The picture in the middle there, somebody tried to get creative and they put a heater vent, a heater tube on the top of that. That does not work. Those are too thin. The temperatures coming out of those appliances are over 200 degrees, and so it could melt through that or burn through that in a pretty quick amount of time. And then finally, the one on the right there, that's a roller coaster one. This one's actually gone viral, this picture that I took, but I don't know why they're thinking that exhaust will buoyantly go around a big circle like that, but that's what they've done. This is a complete debacle as far as an installation goes, but it's kind of a funny picture. So luckily we found all three of these things when we were out in the field and we got them fixed and everybody's safe. This is another place that carbon monoxide could potentially come from. It could come from ovens, and oddly enough, even brand new ovens that are gas will put out a tremendous amount of carbon monoxide. Now, when you step away from the oven and get into the little bit more diluted air, it's not as big of a deal, but dirty ovens or ovens that have an incomplete combustion on them can put out carbon monoxide. And as I said, that's a very bad thing. So if you guys are managing properties, this is something to really look forward to, because we got to get that stuff fixed if we don't want to get sued or have some dead folks on our hands, and we definitely don't want that. Moving on, so the single family program is right here. These are the incentives for it. Anything from basically a duplex and below. In other words, single family houses, it doesn't matter what size they are, and duplexes are all in this. Anytime you get above that, into the triplexes, quadplexes, and then apartment complexes, we're going to be talking about that kind of stuff next week. But anything below a duplex, it'll qualify for that. And these are the incentives for it. $600 for insulation, air sealing is up to $1,000. Knee wall is up to $525. We're going to talk about all this stuff in a little bit. Crawl spaces are $450. Ducts are up to $1,500. HVAC replacement is anywhere from $200 to $1,500, and that's dependent upon what kind of unit you put in and the SEER. And then finally, we're going to talk about the tune-up program that we've got. That's up to $150, and it's a pretty cool program. So we'll go through that in a little bit. So the first thing that we have to kind of understand is that PSO looks at a house as a total unit. It's a whole system concept, and there are a few programs out there in the world that look at it that way, but we want that whole structure to work correctly, and we do it scientifically. So we look at the environment, the outdoor air and the indoor air, how those two pieces communicate, what pollutants are inside and outside, and again, how those things communicate, and the energy sources that are coming in to either heat or cool that structure, and how those are affecting the whole building. And so that's how we do that. And this is kind of how we figure it all out. So we've got a blower door on the left. What that does is it simulates a 15-mile-an-hour wind on every surface of the house. So when we fire that up, it's got a little computer on it called a manometer, and we pull the air down to 50 pascals. And from that, we can find all the holes and the leaks in the envelope itself for the property, and figure out what to do with it. As long as we can identify them, we can figure out how to fix them. The thing on the left there is the same sort of deal. We depressurize the ductwork, and we depressurize it to 25 pascals. And from that point, we can figure out where the ducts are leaking. I'll kind of go through ducts in a little bit, but this is the process. And the beauty of this kind of thing is the manometer doesn't lie. So, you know, we can find stuff that people have been wondering about for a really long time and get it fixed finally for you. So this is how a house kind of functions. Cold air comes in at the bottom, hot air goes out to the top. It's the old building science of junior high. Hot air rises, cold air falls. And that's kind of what we look at. So where all of that air is going, where it's coming in, and how it travels through the house is what we look at when we're looking over a house. So air sealing and insulation are very important, and they kind of go together. If you don't have good air sealing, the insulation typically doesn't work real well. Here are a few pictures that I've taken out in the field, and these are typical air sealing issues or problems. The top left one there is the attic access. Those are hardly ever sealed, and so that's one of the first places that we look for. Sheetrock missing, like down there by that toilet. These folks had a plumbing problem, and then the plumber never came back and sheetrocked over it, and the homeowner didn't either, and then they were wondering why their bathroom was cold or hot. We figured that out pretty quick. The top there, let's see, in the middle, is the this guy ran a lot of conduit through his house, and that conduit then went through the garage and then finally out to the outside, and it had cables in from Cox Cable and a few other places too. So all of that air that was coming from the house or from the garage is coming right into the house. So we sealed that up, got that taken care of. The one below is a fireplace surround. So anytime you have two different pieces of material coming together, like sheetrock and brick, or wood and sheetrock, various other things like that, that seam there is usually a leakage area. And again, pretty simple to seal it up. You hit it with a little bit of caulk and it takes care of the problem. Another one in the middle there, you see the breaker box, all around that breaker box, and then through the holes through the breaker box, those are sealed with caulk or sometimes foam, depending on what it looks like. This one was particularly bad because it had a very large conduit that went to the outside, and so it was blowing air quite a bit when we had the blower door on. And then the last three there, just basically holes in the sheetrock. We can go over the ductwork in a little bit, but that's gives you kind of an idea of what we look for. This is another thing that we look for. These pictures were taken basically in my neighborhood. And what I do on frosty days, I know I'm a building science nerd, but what I do is take pictures of other people's houses when they have zebra stripes on them. What that tells me is the insulation is inadequate, and the air inside the house or inside the envelope where the people live are coming through the sheetrock, and then insulation is porous, so it doesn't stop air. So basically what's happening here is, since the hot air inside is buoyant on this frosty day, the 2x structure inside that frame of the roof is more insulated than the plywood or the sheathing where the shingles are. So that's why you see all the framing underneath it. And that's a clear indication that these folks need some air sealing and some insulation. This is what insulation should look like. As you can see, you see no 2x structure. The bottom of the rafters is completely covered. And so that's what it ought to look like when we're done. We mandate that it has to be up to R38 or higher before we can pay on it. This is another way to fix the same thing. This is an open cell polyurethane foam, and as you can see, they've pulled out all of the old insulation, the fiberglass or whatever was up there, and then they have sealed it and insulated underneath that roof plane. Now, this is a much more efficient way of getting it done, but again, it's a little bit more expensive. The other beauty of this, though, is it also brings the ductwork, as you can see right there in the middle of that picture, into conditioned space. And so if the ducts are leaking, they might leak a little bit, but they're leaking into the conditioned space underneath the insulation and the air seal. And so that property is going to work a lot better when it's done that way. Moving on to knee walls. A knee wall is a wall that shares attic space, and then on the other side of it is living space. A lot of people call these the bonus room, but typically these are upstairs in a second floor or kind of tucked into an attic. And these these walls are pretty problematic because they are, it's 70 degrees inside the house. On a hot summer day, it's 120 to 180 degrees in the attic. And so the temperature difference there drives that heat inside the house. So it's very important to get these sealed and insulated correctly. And that's one of the things that we look for when we're out looking at these houses. This is a very typical knee wall from the back side of it. Insulation does not work unless it touches all 6 sides of the frame. So this is a good example. You've got sheetrock on one side, you got the frame going around the other, the right, left, top, and bottom. But the problem is there's no insulation, or no sheathing, I should say, on the outside of that framing member. And so basically what happens is you get a convective loop along the surface of the sheetrock, and it's pulling the temperatures from one side to the other side. This is what it looks like when we're finished with it. So what we do is we pull off all the fiberglass insulation and then foam that with an open cell polyurethane foam. And that does 2 things. It seals that area. It blocks all the way to the bottom of it and seals off the air that's coming from the attic and going underneath the floor. And then the other big thing it does is it insulates it really well. So we insulate that to an R19, and that's about the only way that you can fix a knee wall permanently, and it'll work great for the life of the structure. Crawl spaces are very problematic in our area as well. We live in a hot, humid climate, and what we see, gosh, this month and last month are good examples of it. We've had a tremendous amount of rain lately, and that rain soaks into the ground outside, especially if you have gutters that are too close to the building. And then that water will migrate underneath the floor or underneath the house and into the crawl space. That creates a very humid climate under there. And whenever the air conditioner comes on, it pulls that air from that crawl space into the house. Along with that airstream, you also get mold spores and mildew. You get various things that you don't want to be breathing from various rodents and those sorts of things that live in that area. So along with moisture, and that could be buckling floors and that kind of thing. So crawl spaces are very important to make sure that they're fixed correctly. We have 2 ways to fix a crawl space, and here's one of them. As you can see on the side there, there's a closed cell polyurethane foam that's applied to the walls of the structure itself in the crawl space, and then it's not ventilated. That's an important thing in this picture here. There's also a vapor barrier that is a 0 perm vapor barrier that's applied to the floor of that crawl space first before the insulation is put on. So two big pieces here that I want to kind of pay attention to. Number one, the vapor barrier is a 0 perm. In other words, there is no water getting through that at all. That means humidity too. Number 2 is the adherence of the closed cell polyurethane foam. That has a higher R value, but the other great thing about it is at 2.5 inches, it becomes a vapor retarder. So it slows that moisture going from one side of that substrate to the other side of the substrate, and it completely seals off that area. So you're basically bringing the crawl space into conditioned space, or the house itself. And because of that, it's going to work a lot better. You're going to seal off all of the moisture, the mildew problems, and all the other bad stuff that you are trying not to breathe. And this is what that looks like in the real world. The yellow stuff there kind of looks like it's a little bit shiny. That's the vapor barrier. And that vapor barrier is overlapped by a foot or 2. And then the seam is sealed with this special vapor barrier tape that's produced by the vapor barrier manufacturer. So the adhesive is built to adhere to the plastic that you're putting down. And then the foam on the side there, that is the closed cell polyurethane foam. And as you can see, there's no ventilation under there at all. unless it's coming from inside the house, but it's not going from the outside of the crawl space to the outside of the house itself. And that's an important piece. We're trying to seal that portion off. This is the other way to do it. So in the previous pictures, if I'm crawling under there before we've done any work and I see either standing water or lime deposits, in other words, where there's been a pool of water and it's evaporated away, we don't want to do the previous way of fixing it. This is the way we talk about doing it. And so basically what happens with this is we keep that crawl space still ventilated. So the little fins on the outside of the crawl space are open and air is passing from the outside to the inside of the crawl space, and it's trying to get that moisture out and everything else. But underneath the floor system and around all of the joists, there's a closed cell polyurethane foam applied to 2.5 inches. And again, that's going to be a vapor barrier or a vapor retarder. So it's going to slow down the water vapor in humidity form going from one side to the other side of that, basically from the crawl space to the inside of the house. And that's what we want to do with that. This is what that looks like in the real world. As you can see, all of the framing portions, you see no wood at all. It's totally encapsulated with foam, and that's what it's supposed to look like. So let's talk about HVAC systems. Right now, the code is 14 SEER. This is an old slide, so we're going to talk about a 13 SEER air conditioner, but a typical installation that most people get when they're purchasing an HVAC system, like a 13 SEER, is not very good. If you go back to that slide there, you can see that it is about an 8.5 in SEER. The reason for that are various reasons. We'll go through each one of those. The first one is it sized correctly? So there is not an HVAC company out there or a genius that works for them that can size an HVAC system in their head. I want to make that very clear. The only way to do that correctly is through a manual J load calculation, which is a computerized program, and you build the house inside the computer, and then it tells you how many BTUs that you need to offset the load that you've got. And I can tell you right now, I mean, even Einstein is not able to do that calculation in his head. So most of the HVAC people are not able to do that either. If they're doing a manual J load calculation and they show you that, then that's probably an accurate way of sizing the HVAC system. The next thing is ductwork. And as you can see, that's a huge portion of it. The ducts have to be tight. If they're not tight and sealed up, there's a tremendous amount of energy that is lost. And, you know, you're paying for that air. As my grandpa used to say, that's bought air. And we want to, since we bought it, we want to keep it inside the house where it belongs. Next thing is correct flow. So this would be an example if you've got really tight ductwork, but they're pinched. It's the same thing as looking at a hose and you pinch the hose. What happens to the water at the end of the hose? It slows down, and we don't want that. We want that air to have the correct volume coming out and then into the house itself. So if they're pinched, that's a problem. And then finally, the poor charge. We see this frequently. There's the charge on the HVAC system. The refrigerant itself doesn't have enough, and as a result, it doesn't work right. So you have to have all of those pieces in place in a typical installation in order to get the full value, the SEER that you're paying for. So when we have our blower door hooked up, what we do is we go around to all of the supplies and the returns, and we put a tape stuff on the surface of that grill, and then we fire up that blower door. And if the blower door sucks that tape off, it kind of flaps in the wind like that, that's where we know we need to look for a leak. And these are problematic areas right here. There's a couple of pictures of that happening. The returns are some of the worst places that leak. And I've got a couple of other pictures here that we can show. But basically, anytime, like I said, you have two pieces of material coming together. In this case, it would be sheetrock and steel from the grill or the boots. All of that needs to be sealed up. You can seal it with a product called Mastic or caulk. and we can go over that in a few minutes. This is another place. I've actually found wiring boxes that are inside the returns because they've tried to use the return. They've tried to use the inside of the wall as the return. That's very problematic because you can't seal that properly. There's too many pieces inside of it that are coming together like two pieces of wood or sheetrock or whatever the case may be. And what's happening then is it's pulling air from the easiest source. A lot of times that easiest source is either the crawl space or it's the attic. And those two places are places you don't want to be breathing the air from. So we want to make sure that we get the returns correct. Here's another one, two pieces of material coming together. This is a picture of a return. And you've got the two pieces of framing coming together there with this great big crack. That crack is then migrated throughout the rest of the house. So you're pulling air from places you don't want. This is a typical return. This is the return box. So the HVAC system is actually sitting on top of this, or the furnace itself is sitting on top of this. And as you can see, there's stuff down there. There's dead bugs and dirt and all kinds of things. It should be perfectly clean down there because keep in mind that area is filtered. So if you see this stuff, we need to get in there and we need to figure out why it's not air sealed and then seal it up. As you can see too, this is a great example of moisture coming through on that right side. You'll see moisture lines that are coming up on the top or on the bottom of that 2x4. And then on the sheetrock itself as well. So that shows that when that air conditioner comes on, it's pulling moisture from areas that you don't want it to be pulling moisture from. So again, got to get these things sealed. These are the areas that we apply mastic to. So like I said, it's basically every seam on that air conditioner and the ductwork, both supply and return. And here's what it looks like when it goes through the floor or the ceiling if you flip this around the other way. So even the register needs to have some sort of air seal around it as well. This is what a return looks like when it's completed. And as you can see, it's perfectly clean. We've got ductboard down there. We've got mastic on all of the areas that are seams. And this thing tested out really well. So that's a good shot of that. Okay, so moving on to air conditioners. Right now, like I said, code is 14 SEER. So PSO is always a better than code program. And the way we kind of look over that and we protect the customer too is we look at the AHRI certificate. The AHRI certificate shows it's a third-party testing agency, and they test all HVAC systems with the coil and the condenser combined. And when the coil and condenser are working in harmony and it's sized correctly, then that's how you get the SEER. The SEER is the seasonal energy efficiency rating, and that's how air conditioners are rated for energy efficiency. So the higher the SEER is, the better off you are. As you can see, our incentives start at 16 SEER, they go up to 20 SEER, and then we have a little bit more money for mini splits and geothermal. Both of those pieces are much more efficient than a normal air conditioner. That's why those are there, and that's why they've got a little bit more money. The further we get away from code, or the better we get away from code, the more we can pay on these systems. So the coil and the condenser, this is an important piece here. The coil is that little A-looking thing inside the furnace. And what that does is when the air conditioner comes on, it's kind of like a beer mug. It cools down so much that condensation accumulates on that coil and then it falls into the tray below. And that's why in a hot summer day, you can see water dripping from the inside of your house to the outside of your house through that air conditioner. Well, this is why right here, because it's dehumidifying the house at the same time it's conditioning the air or cooling it down. The coil on the the condenser, sorry, on the outside is another very important piece. If you picture this more like a radiator on a car, what happens if you have the radiator clogged up? The car is going to overheat. Well, this is expelling all of the heat from the inside of the house to the outside of the house. You've got to keep those areas clean, and that's part of what we look for whenever they are doing a tune-up. but it's also important too that these pieces have to be mated together. And that's what we look at with the AHRI certificate. We want to make sure that those pieces are working in harmony and sized correctly. This is a mini split. A mini split is sort of, I don't want to say new technology because it's been around for a really long time, but we're seeing a lot more of these now. Mini splits are very efficient. First of all, you eliminate the ductwork, so you have absolutely no duct leakage. But the other beauty of this is the sears on these things are really high. You know, 21 sear. We've got a company now that's producing one that's 28 sear. So they're very, very efficient, and they do both heating and cooling. The beauty of this is if you have an all-electric system, I'm going to say that again, if it's an all-electric system, in other words, the furnace and the air conditioner, obviously air conditioner, but both pieces are electric, and you eliminate the ductwork, you go back with a mini split, PSO can pay you for the sear of that mini split. But the other beauty of it is you've eliminated the ductwork, so you have no duct leakage. So we can pay you a duct incentive on the top, on top of the mini split incentive too. So it's basically two pieces of money coming together to help you out. And you know, this is a great way to fix stuff like that. So talking about a tune-up, these are the, this is the tune-up program here. We use a company called MeasureQuick, and it's a non-invasive way of tuning up an HVAC system. I gotta say, I know I'm a nerd, but this is really cool. All of these little probes go on various pieces of the air conditioner. There's also an electric meter that goes on it too. And then everything is wirelessly communicated back to an iPad or your phone or even a laptop. And the beauty of it is it's all of that information coming into one central system. So you can diagnose things a whole lot better. This is a picture of the probes on the left side, where those are placed, and then the snapshot of what the app looks like here. This is what the condenser looks like before and after. Obviously, if this thing is clogged up, and in Oklahoma, we have cottonwoods and weed eaters and all kinds of dirt and grime that gets in these systems. A clean system works wonderful, a dirty system doesn't. And so it's pretty simple. You just basically, you wash out that condenser. What I do on mine is I take the fan out, I wash it out on the inside to the out, and then I wash all of the grime and gunk away from it. So this is a great before and after picture. That's what that looks like. The coil inside the unit is this. The picture on the left there is a side picture of the coil, and as you can see, it looks like an upside down A or a V, and it's basically made of the same materials. It's a louvered material inside. Air passes through it. If air can't pass through, the machine isn't as efficient. It's not working correctly. So again, that's another thing during the tune-up. If we find something like that, we brush that down, wash it out, make it clean, and go about our day. And then the other piece of it is adding refrigerant. Sometimes we find that refrigerant is low on these machines. The dials there on the left side, that's a picture of the MeasureQuick app. And as you can see, it makes it really useful for the HVAC provider to go out there and do that, because those little yellow pieces, I think it's yellow, it might be green, I'm colorblind, but the little pieces that are in the middle where the dial is, once you have the thing charged correctly, those little dials slide right up into that sweet spot area, and it makes it great for doing adding refrigerant. You know, you're right on the number whenever that's done that way. And then at the end of that, we get this massive report, and the report also helps us diagnose all of the ins and outs of that HVAC system. So, you know, for instance, we looked at one the other day, and it was having an issue with not as much refrigerant. It needed a little bit more refrigerant, and it was freezing the coil. By looking at this system, it showed us we need to go look at the coil. Here's the reason, and it gives us the humidity, the temperature readings, both in and out or supply and return. You know, it's a wonderful way of looking at a system in a scientific way and figuring out where those problems are. And then, you know, we can fix them, tune them up, and it really helps out with the lifespan of that unit. So here we are at the questions portion. I'm going to go ahead and move this slide forward. These are all the contacts for this program. Lisa is the head person over at PSO that runs the single family residential programs. And then the ones on the outside, you can see my name there. Andrea is the program manager. Curtis and Maria are both account managers. We're all out in the field and we can help you guys out, not only navigate the programs, but diagnose houses that have particular issues going on with them. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to questions, see if I can answer anything for you guys. And I really appreciate you attending.
Jason, I have a question
Sure.
or comment. Can you talk a little bit about short cycling?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So we run into that quite a bit. When I was talking about the manual J load calculation, what happens typically is people go out there, HVAC people go out there, they'll put in an HVAC system and they guess. And when they guess, they typically guess too high. So an example is if you put in a system that should have a 2-ton and they've put in a 3-ton air conditioner, that air conditioner, when it comes on, it doesn't run long enough for that coil to get wet, to get cold enough to get wet. And so it doesn't pull the moisture, the humidity out of the house the way it should. What that means basically is that the homeowners don't feel very comfortable, so they turn the air conditioner up to compensate for the high humidity inside the house, and that wastes energy. So basically what's happening there is, if you can picture a Hummer going from stoplight to stoplight and you floor it in between, right? Well, you're not getting there any faster. You're using a tremendous amount of energy to get there, but it's also breaking the equipment. And that's exactly what happens with an HVAC system. If it's oversized, you're not getting the job done. You're not getting the job done any faster. And really, it breaks the equipment. It wears it out. So that's another reason that we want to make sure that the HVAC systems are sized correctly, because it's not only an energy efficiency problem, it's also a humidity problem and a health problem. So we want to make sure that all of that's done the right way. Great question. What else do you have?
We don't have any in the chat yet, but everyone, please feel free to type any questions in the chat that you have.
I was wondering, how often should you get your system tuned up? I know I had mine recently done and I participated with the PSO tune up. It was great.
Great.
When
Yeah.
I should sign up again to have that done.
It should be done every couple of years.
Okay.
Most every 5 years. I'm a little weird about this, Carrie, so I go and I tune mine up all the time. Every year I go out, before I turn on the air conditioner, I clean out that condenser to make sure that it's good and clear of debris so that it runs correctly. But you know, I'm also one of those people that pulls their refrigerator out and I clean the coils on the refrigerator too. So I know I'm abnormal. But yes, you should be definitely taking care of those things. Kristen, do we have any other questions out there?
We don't, but is there a way to contact you or Carrie in the event that someone has a question later?
Absolutely. My number is right here. Carrie, you could get, actually just shoot me over a note. I'll hook you up with Carrie. Her number is not on this because Lisa's the manager of this particular program. But again, like I said, if you want to talk to Carrie, I can get you in touch with her. Another thing too, I run into, actually, I get the problem children. I'll just come out and say it. So all of those HVAC AC systems that are not functioning correctly, or a house that does weird things, like it's got issues with high humidity or various other things, just uncomfortable. I'm called out to those frequently to diagnose them and figure out what the problems are. So if y'all have a house that is not functioning correctly, give us a call, because we can go out there, figure it out. We can figure it out for free. And then on top of that, we'll give you money to fix it. So, that's the beauty of these programs. We're here to help you guys. And if you've got a problem house, let us know about it. I've been in houses that the homeowners just thought that, for instance, the room over the garage is just supposed to be hot. So we're going to stick the kids up there. Well, that room up there isn't supposed to be hot, and we can fix that. We know how to fix it, and we'll give you a little bit of money to help you out with it too. So, any issues like that you're seeing in your rental properties, or even in your own house, give us a call. We can help out with it.
That's great. Well, since there's no other questions, I wanted to remind everyone that next week on July 19th at 10 a.m., we will be having a similar webinar, but we will be talking about opportunities for multifamily properties. Please register in advance of the meeting. You will get a confirmation email. We will also be recording that webinar as well. So if you're unable to make it on Monday, you will be able to find that recording as well as this one on the City of Tulsa's YouTube page. Thank you everyone for joining us, and have a good Monday.
Thank you.